Thank you and welcome everyone to the policy panel of Game Days. As you know, Game Days is a big gaming conference and festival connecting art, creativity, and business and showing you what's happening behind the curtain of game development. I'm very happy we have this policy panel, kind of untraditional for a gaming conference. And I'm honored to be the moderator of this panel. My name is Kolesár. I'm a partner in CIVITTA. CIVITTA is an innovation hub and an advisory based in Tartu, Estonia, but we are active in 17 countries of emerging Europe. But this panel is not about me. I have great guests that I will be talking to. I have Kristina Janković-Obučina, the executive manager at Serbian Games Association. Kristina, great to have you with us this evening.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you so much for inviting us.
And we have Jakub Marszałkowski, head of Game Industry Conference and co-founder and board member of Indie Games Poland. Jakub, welcome.
Hello, I can't wait for the discussion.
So actually, before I start with the questions, I would like to learn a little bit more about yourselves and your organization. So how you came to do what you do and what your organizations actually represent and what your organizations do. And I will also, afterwards, I will also ask you to give a snapshot of the local kind of gaming ecosystem. But let's start with kind of introducing yourself properly and your organization that you represent. So Kristina, if you can start.
Thank you. So as you said, I'm Kris from the SGA. That's our shortest name, shorter than Srpska asocijacija industrije video igara, which is Serbian Games Association. We've been around since March 2018, so more than 3 years now. We started off by 8 founding members, and recently we celebrated our 100th members. So we have 100 members, which I think is a huge leap in 3 years, and it shows perfectly the atmosphere and the leap that the industry had and the entire ecosystem. As you mentioned, I'm the executive manager of the association. I'm in charge of all the communications with our members, but also I work on our events initiatives alongside with my colleague Relja Bobić, who is our program director. So we are a small team of only 2 full-time people, but we have an amazing board of directors behind us who represent our members and all of their needs, and we get regular inputs from them. So it's been working really, really great up until now. If you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Yeah, what's your personal journey actually to gaming? What's your background and what brought you to establish SGA?
I started off as a journalist, actually, then veered off into IT, but I've always been a passionate gamer. And I thought that there's really no chance for me to work in the gaming industry ever. But the association appeared. They needed someone in the beginning to guide the process and work with the members. So I guess I was just lucky enough to be the first one to join the team.
Great. Great, Kris. Thanks a lot. Jakub, I know that you're also an assistant professor at the Poznan University, right? So yes. What brought you to gaming? And if you can tell us a little bit about both actually the game industry conference as well as Indie Games Poland.
So games are actually a thing I always wanted to do. Like since I was a child, I remember I found a magazine from my father. It was like technology magazine, and there was first video game I saw somewhere back in the 80s, and I was like, yeah, this is what I will be doing. Instead, I'm now doing conference and organization, but yeah, okay, still games. I was doing game development for some time. I was developing browser strategy games, and then I started my PhD. I started teaching. Then came the conference. The conference in the beginning was actually a students' event, and it grew. We helped it grow. We developed it, and then at some point, this crazy idea of Indie Games Poland organization group of people being crazy enough to do some after-hours pro bono work to help the industry, to help developers grow, to organize initiatives. In Indie Games Poland, I'm actually responsible mostly for international contacts, some of the event projects, but not all of them, and well, panels like this. discussions, cooperations, all that stuff. Indie Games Poland is doing some trade missions, some booths, some other international projects. We're also trying to cooperate in the Poland scale, so partnering with some events, discussing sometimes with government what, well, right now we're discussing what forms of help, what forms of support could be possible, but also good for the industry in the future.
Yeah, I am actually very curious, and I have a few questions regarding the potential government support of the gaming industry and the gaming ecosystem. So we'll definitely discuss that. But can you give us a snapshot of the Polish gaming ecosystem, and also, I guess, a question for people who are not necessarily active in the gaming ecosystem or the gaming industry? How is it different from, let's say, the startup ecosystem or the innovation ecosystem? How would you explain the importance of gaming as a sector to a local politician? Because, you know, gaming has some connotations to some people, but obviously the impact of it is immense. So let's start with first with explaining the difference between, or the specificities of the gaming industry or the gaming ecosystem to a layman or a politician. We can start with Jakub and then Chris.
Sure. I'm actually not that big fan of startups ecosystem, so I will not compare that there. Games are simply better. Yeah, that's my point. But what's the key difference here? Games are cultural. Games are cultural product. Games are way of telling stories, way of showing things we care for and other stuff. And actually, I think the explanation for politicians, it's very simple. Games are the biggest Polish cultural products. It's like we are not exporting many movies. We are exporting quite little music, some books, but again, not huge volumes. And then when doing recent research, we find out that in like 6 or 7 last years, we have nearly 20 games that sold over 1 million copies globally. So we have millions of gamers globally playing Polish games, and this is our biggest cultural export. This is our possibility to be in global culture, to shape it, to tell our stories, to get people interested in Poland, in our culture, maybe in some tourism to Poland, all that stuff that is not possible for us, for example, with movie industry, because for this Hollywood thing, we were simply too late, and everything, this market was already shared, and we will not at any point get a big part of that market. And yes, we are taking a big part of game market with Polish game industry. Should I throw in some numbers here?
Sure.
So we did the report 2021, the game industry of Poland report. That's our newest publication. We find out we have 470 studios and publishers in game production in Poland. This is 96 or something like this % export. We are not discussing here local market. We are discussing game production, which is game exports. We also find out that we have 12,000 people working in game production here. Yeah, 1, 2, 3 zeros, 12,000 people. It's huge industry. It's amazing how it's growing, because our last report was showing 9,700, and I was like almost sure we will not manage to grow another 20-something % year over year, and then miracle, we find out from somewhere over 2,000 new people to work in the industry in 2021. So I will do that again. Yeah, it's not possible to have another 3,000 people to grow by 25% again. Let's do that. Yeah, something like this.
Great. Chris, would you like to add something to kind of how we can explain the importance of the gaming industry to politicians?
Well, just the main difference between the other like IT startups that you mentioned, it's usually all about technology, but here it's all about creativity, culture, language, storytelling, everything that Jakub said. And I have to confirm that this growth has been visible also in our ecosystem based on our annual research that we do. Again, 20%, roughly 20% growth year after year, which I think is amazing. So I would definitely, in one sentence, call ourselves the fastest growing creative and tech industry in the country.
Do you have a few numbers to throw also about how the Serbian ecosystem has been developing in the past years?
Definitely. We're a lot smaller market than Poland, for example. We have around 2,100, so 2,100 employees in the industry. We're very proud to say that 30% of these are women. That actually puts us in the first place in Europe based on these statistics. It's info from the EGDF, European Game Developers Federation, report that they also publish every year. So that this is something we're very proud of. Also based, for example, on our SGA jobs platform that we have on our website listing all open positions in the gaming industry. We see new positions being opened every day. I would say around 100 positions are available every day, but we also see some new ones that we haven't seen before. For example, user acquisition specialists are more and more required, employer branding specialists, which is something completely new for big companies. So based solely on this, it's not only the artists and the developers that are making these games, but many other aspects that we can talk about more later.
Mm-hmm. And Jakub, I mean, Poland really is a success story, not only in Central and Eastern Europe, but I think kind of Europe-wide success story of creating a functioning and successful gaming arena or ecosystem. What are the origins or the success factors, lessons learned that you can draw from the Polish example that are, let's say, transferable to Slovakia, to Serbia, and other countries in this region?
I don't know, honestly. It's difficult to point factors. We have some ideas, we have some guesses. First of all, I would say it's a lot of luck. So I strongly believe it's matter of luck often. But then to be able to have this luck, to make success out of being lucky, you need to be in the right place, in the right time with all that this luck requires. So we've been growing the industry randomly, naturally for some time, and it was growing, it was achieving some small successes, and then at some point it exploded. It is maybe a little bit connected to boom on Warsaw Stock Exchange and the market thing. It exploded like 2 years ago and was very big and very popular for some 2 years to some level of speculation maybe, and it dropped a little already. So probably it was some speculation behind that, but that process made funding quite easily available to grow, to scale up studios and something like this. So maybe funding is really important. Maybe funding is a good thing. We still point out that on the very low scale, on the very beginning stage of studios, the funding is still too difficult to find. But indeed, I believe something like 10 people studio willing to scale up higher in Poland. Maybe there is more money than studios looking for those money. So this might be some important factor. Some other factors we often point is, well, we believe we have quite good teaching at the university levels in Poland, especially programmers. I believe there is such a thing as Polish programmer, known at least in the West, where we were exporting them for some times. I'm teaching programmers myself. I know where best of my students are working, so those are the best. They are in the best American companies or in best Polish game dev studios as well. So good programmers teaching, availability of programmers is definitely a thing. What else? We think maybe good English and widespread English knowledge is a factor. We obviously have this funny Russian mafia accent like I do, But I would say most of people in the Polish industry should be able to have decent conversation in English, will be able to read stuff in English, will be able to write emails and so on. And it's not that true for not all countries around Poland or something like this. So maybe this is a factor as well. At some point, it became quite beneficial because in those 12,000 people right now, we estimate we have 1,000 people from abroad, and they are not speaking any Polish. So having this industry being able to communicate in English, having many companies move their internal production processes to English already some times ago, opened us to bring for bringing those specialists that we need from abroad. And we could probably look for more aspects. We believe we're hardworking. I don't know. Maybe we shouldn't discuss that because game dev it often ends up as crunch. Crunch is not great, but we're hungry for success. We're hardworking. So we want to achieve. We want to make great games. What else? I don't know. Maybe the not mobile thing. Maybe the PC gaming thing. Polish industry never did major shift to produce mobile games. We always produced more PC games. Steam was always first choice for most of the studios. And this haven't changed when I have seen some other countries moving most of their industries to mobile, and it has not changed still. So we're still mostly producing PC Steam, indie PC Steam, AA, PC Steam, AAA games. Maybe this is another factor. I don't know. Mobile seems difficult for me. And yeah, I'm probably talking too long already.
Maybe one last complementing question and about Poland. You mentioned that 96% of basically games are exported, right? And Poland is obviously a huge market. We always look at from our countries at Poland that this is, this multi-million euro and people market, and for either tech companies or gaming companies, it's you can even be a successful developer or a successful company if you are operating in Poland. Was that at all kind of a factor in the success, or not at all, because they were thinking from the very beginning about exporting?
So we're actually discussing market and industry as quite separate beings, or as quite separate entities. I don't know. Market, yeah, there is sure big market, 20 million gamers, maybe not as willing to spend money as Westerners, because there is obviously salary difference. But Polish market is also very strong in PC gaming. So I would say we are like probably 8th biggest PC gaming market. But the last moment when you could make a game for Polish market only and succeed on that was something like 2010, maybe even earlier. As the digital revolution proceeded, Polish gamers got access to global markets, to Steam, to Humble Bundle. I don't know, maybe even things like G2A played some role in that. And Polish gamers are playing global titles as all European and Western gamers. Yeah, sure, they are playing some share of Polish games, but that would be like 5, 4, 10, something like this in this range percentage. And they are playing all the big global titles. So you cannot make games for Polish market only and survive on that, even if Polish market is important for your company, and it happens. We know games where Polish community is like 3rd, 4th biggest or something like this. It's still the American market you want to achieve first.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Chris, you mentioned that the Serbian gaming industry is growing at a fast pace, employing over 2,000 people, which is quite significant. When you think of, let's say, a gaming ecosystem in other countries that you look up to, that you have some objectives to either collaborate with or just to maybe get inspired, who are you looking up to?
Well, we definitely always like to compare ourselves to Finland because we're somewhat similar in terms of size. I mean, size of the country. Serbia is at about 7.5 million people at the moment, and we know that they were at specifically the exact same place where we were 10 years ago. The same number of employees, the same size of the market. But they were lucky enough to start developing their industry when the whole mobile market exploded. So they actually caught that wave, and really the majority of their studios that are most successful are making games for mobile studios. So we sort of missed that peak of mobile gaming. We were a bit late to join. I would say the industry in Serbia has been evolving steadily for about, let's say, 10 years, but the biggest change has been in the past, let's say, 3 to 5 years. So I would definitely say Finland, not just in terms of the size of the market, but the opportunities for the teams, education, everything, even their association that we sort of looked at when we were in the first place organizing the SGA. But I would add to everything that Jakub said, of course, the financial part, the education. I would also say that Serbia was very lucky in terms of the whole brain drain situation, for example. Really not a lot of our specialists went abroad or looked for opportunities abroad. I think that's one of the biggest things. So we managed to retain talent in the country. So we have a lot of seniors that have been here since the beginning of the industry. That was really lucky. And let's say, since we're talking about good stuff, let's add one hurdle that we're really hoping will change in the future, which I would say is the biggest the biggest issue right now for teams. We cannot import dev kits for consoles. Yeah. If Jakub didn't know that. So I think that's really, really slowing down the development of core teams, of teams working on AAA titles. So we can only develop games for the PC market, and that is slowed down definitely by this. I don't know when this situation, Jakub, changed, for example, in Poland. Since when can you import dev kits? Probably since forever.
I do not recall such problems at all. I think dev kits were quite available. Yeah,
well, Serbia is not a EU country, just to clarify for the people watching us. So I think that's one of the biggest hurdles for example, the Sony or the Xbox teams, why they haven't decided yet to dedicate their time and their teams to this region, I would say, but we'll see. Hopefully it will change in the future. And it's only 2 years ago that we got the merchant accounts on Play Store and App Store. So I think things are starting to look up rapidly in the past several years. And also I wouldn't underestimate the impact that the SGA has made and all other initiatives that appeared in the past couple of years. We can talk more about how we impact the ecosystem later.
Yeah. And the focus of the teams then are mostly PC games, just like in Poland, or?
Actually, no, 60% of our teams are making mobile games. For example, the most successful sports mobile game in the world is made here in Nordeus, Top 11. It's a football manager game. They've been around for 11 years and are definitely still at the top. And not only games, I would like to highlight that, for example, the MetaHuman creator, the latest tool from Epic Games, was actually made in Serbia and not in Belgrade, but in Novi Sad, which is a smaller town up north. So we definitely have talent that develops really groundbreaking tools that will be, I think, used all over the gaming industry globally.
This is a policy panel, so I would like to discuss a little bit about the role of the public sector and the government in stimulating the gaming industry or removing hurdles. We mentioned some of them in the conversation already, but I'll start with the more general question. What do you think is the role of the public sector in the gaming industry? And we can start with Chris.
Well, I mentioned Finland as a good example of how this can go. We also talked a lot with UKI, the British Association, and they told us, for example, when we started off, just to be careful, to always step on the safe side and maybe not get involved with the government so much. That was, for example, their advice. But I've seen amazing things happen in Germany and Italy. both of these countries implemented the gaming funds in the past couple of years. So the number of games published in those countries has skyrocketed, really. I think Germany has a fund of 15 million euros and Italy maybe 4 million euros. And this is specifically for gaming teams, which is something we haven't seen in Serbia yet. So there are no funds dedicated specifically to gaming startups, but just some general IT startups that also include creative industries.
Mm-hmm. And are you trying to talk to the Serbian government about any of the incentives or specific policies that they could implement?
Definitely, we were in contact with them since the SGA started. As you know, these mechanisms are really slow to move along and to change, but we'll see. That's why I think it's crucial for every country to have an association, to have a body that represents all of these different studios. We have some really good incentives in terms of teams operating from Serbia. For example, if you are a company, any company in Serbia, and want to invest in a gaming startup, you have some tax returns that are really big, if I'm not mistaken, 25%. And also some tax deductions for research and development. So there are some things in place, but definitely we see room for improvement there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Jakub, what do you think from your experience is or should be the role of the public sector or the government in helping the gaming industry?
I would say public sector is supporting game industries in nearly every country that has big game industry. Like maybe the only exception is US, where there is not that much of that probably. But US was starting the game with some world wonders built. Like they have the Hollywood World Wonder, they have the Internet World Wonder. So yeah, their civilization is ahead to make this joke complete. So they don't, maybe they don't need that. I would say it's quite funny that UK is saying to be careful with government, because actually United Kingdom is, I think, the first country that had the tax scheme, the tax incentive, where you could regain some taxes if you were producing cultural games or stuff like this. I know France has that program. I've seen Canada throwing a lot of money on game studios to relocate to Canada, and so on and so on and so on. So those programs are nearly everywhere. And if you are unlucky enough to be producing games in a country that does not have any form of such support, then you're kind of unlucky, because then you are competing with some shackles on your legs because others have support. In Poland, we had some of those support. It's maybe not the best moment to discuss that, because most of the programs are now on pause or maybe gone, because some European funding is gone and is not yet there. But I'm having my fingers crossed, and we're trying to talk with the government that new programs will come, that new programs are needed. Very needed thing is also, I strongly believe, industry organization being active and helping the youngest and the smallest teams, like we are Indie Games Poland are doing. So booths, so trade missions, so delegations, so scholarships. Often the support programs available from government are too complicated. There is too much paperwork and other stuff. So teams that are not, I don't know, 40 people strong or something like this, they are not able to get this money, or they are not able to fulfill some requirements. So actually this industrial organization work, and I think most of the industrial organizations in the world is trying to do some kind of such work, doing national booths on big events, taking delegations to big events. Yes, it's very necessary. And doing that without any public money would be probably very difficult, because then you need to get all of the money, all of the costs from your studios. And we probably all know even Gamescom pricing for Eastern European studios, it's crazy pricing. American pricing is twice as crazy. So yeah, you need some support to have your games, have your studios present there.
And imagine you could change one law or implement one initiative, support scheme to help the gaming industry in your countries. What would it be, Chris?
That's a tough question. Let's say tax incentives for startup teams that are developing new games. I think I spoke to someone from the Estonian industry, and they told me that there is such an incentive and that the taxes are 5%, which I think is very reasonable to start a business. I don't know if Jakub agrees or if he heard the same thing.
I will quite agree, not exactly this tax, but I would discuss another tax. So we'll be both in taxes region. I would say in game production, the biggest cost are people, talents, experts, and stuff like that. We don't buy machines, we don't build factories. We need talents that will be sitting at some computers and doing some creative work. And work taxes, I would say work taxes are the biggest cost, not being exactly salaries. So all the taxes that are connected with hiring people, if we could reduce those, we would make better games.
Both of the organizations that you represent, actually at the core of your mission is to basically connect different players, different stakeholders in the ecosystem, right? And it has been probably a little bit more difficult in the past year and a half because of the pandemic. So the networking part, the kind of soft elements in the ecosystem formation, mentoring, conferences, and even this conference is hybrid or online. So what did you do to make it happen and to kind of overcome the challenges related to pandemic and to still fulfill the mission of connecting and networking different stakeholders in your ecosystems? Chris?
So firstly, we changed the format of our events. Before the pandemic, we had live meetups where people come talk about their projects, and then you can mingle afterwards and meet other people. When the pandemic hit, we decided to switch the focus to the educational part. So we didn't have meetups where we speak about a specific game or a project, but very narrow topics for artists, for developers, and everyone from all cities all over Serbia could listen to these, unlike the meetups where you can only come if you live close. So that was the first thing we changed. The other one is we really focused on connecting the community online. So we opened a Discord server for the SGA, where we currently have, let's say, 1,200 people, which is half of the number I mentioned, that the amount of people that work in the industry. And we have a lot of channels. They communicate daily, and the feedback has been really great. So my advice to other associations or whatever grassroots initiatives is to definitely have an online space. My suggestion would be Discord, but you can choose for yourself. And I would say that some other positive aspects came up from the pandemic. For example, all HR processes and recruiting options have been opened up for people to work remotely. So you can hire people from different cities. They don't have to travel. These costs are cut. So there have been some upsides to this as well. And like a final note to your question, we try to incorporate the networking part in every initiative that we have. For example, we have the mentorship program, which of course is online. People meet with their mentors one-on-one, but besides their regular meetings, we always have meetings where we connect all the mentees or all the mentors, or mix and match, and we have breakout rooms in Zoom, always some interactive programs for them. So we try to animate them and to give them a chance to meet other people that they otherwise maybe probably couldn't before the pandemic.
Mm-hmm. Jakub, you are also head of a conference, right? So you've probably dealt with similar issues. Where or have been your solutions to networking, to mentoring, to kind of mobilizing the community during the course of the pandemic?
Okay, so I believe online is not working at all. Can I say that while being panelist on online conference? Okay.
Sure.
No, I don't think online is working for events. Online is only partially working for game development. I think discussing remote work is too big topic for this panel. I'm also not specialist on that, but I think we see wave of delayed games, of delayed releases all around the world. And I would point to difficulties of remote communication in a very creative process of game development as being responsible for that. As for the events part, I don't see online events working, not really. Polish game industry was actually quite connected online before the pandemic hit. So we had groups, we had forums, we had many solutions. And I haven't seen, well, we did like everyone. In 2020, in the beginning of 2021, we moved to online. I believe we did very good online conference in 2020 while doing a lot of homework, observing other events, what is working, what is not working, and how to achieve possible best results. And I was still disappointed with those results. If you're online conference, you're competing with YouTube. It's difficult to compete with YouTube. People are watching your streams in third screen with some work or with some games played on the first screen. It's very difficult to get some actual attendance, to get any engagement from attendees. Even the business networking, those things got dwarfed, and people are not doing that many meetings because they are doing the meetings in between their normal work. I think we still need physical conferences where you are going somewhere for 3 days. So you don't have your everyday job on those 3 days. You don't have your everyday life on those 3 days. So you are not doing talks between shopping and picking up kids. You are not doing meetings between other meetings, I don't know, discussing with colleagues, something like that. So actually our approach was to do a physical event as soon as possible. October 22nd, 24th, we had Poznań Game Arena and Game Industry Conference happening in the physical form. We are behind that. It was successful. It seems it was quite safe. We were actually surprised by how many attendees we had, because we had over 1,150 attendees at the conference in the physical form in 2021, and that included 120 attendees from abroad who trusted us enough to travel to Poland in this difficult year to participate in physical event. I can also tell you how people were eager to have physical event, how they were missing that, and we've observed a lot of that. So it was important, and I think it is important to go back to physical events as soon as possible. We cannot replace that with YouTube.
Mm-hmm. Now let's talk about kind of collaborations across countries. I mean, here in this panel we have kind of representatives of 2 countries, me as a moderator from a 3rd country, but it seems like innovation ecosystems like across Europe are fragmented. There's normally we would expect, I think, a lot more collaboration than it seems to be happening. What is your experience actually with international collaborations? Has this been happening? What can be done to stimulate further, either collaborations between developers or between, let's say, ecosystem leaders or gamers across ecosystems? What is your experience in kind of cross-country exchanges and cooperations? Chris?
Well, we are a member of the EGDF, the before mentioned EGDF, and I think they're doing an amazing job, really connecting all different associations. But of course, their support is on a more policy level, the topic we're discussing today. I think that us as associations have a job to reach out to other ecosystems and sectors across, let's say, Europe. to make an impact. You asked us what could be a good suggestion for this, maybe some co-production projects. Again, if governments have any funding for gaming, maybe they could open it up to include developers from other countries. Hopefully, when conferences come back, maybe we can work more on some models that I would say make it possible for, let's say, young people from one country to travel to the other and vice versa. So we haven't like a student exchange, but only for the gaming industry. And I think this downtime, the pandemic, can give us some time to think up these new formats. I don't think we need to come back to the way things were before. I think we can maybe implement some changes, because some things were working and some were not, and it's the same now. So maybe the best of both worlds.
Jakub?
I think there is a lot of cooperation happening actually, at least for Polish industry. Maybe we're big enough to create some gravitation to bring some interest and so on. But the cooperation in game industry, in game production, is very different from other sectors. Like, we are the most globalized industry, we are the most globalized market. Like, you're not doing promotion of your games in Slovakia or Serbia, or usually you're not even doing promotion of your games in Poland. You're doing promotion of your games globally on Steam, on Xbox, on mobile or something like this. And our companies are able to consider very few markets separately and do promo on them. And with the cooperation, it's very similar. Like, companies do not actually care if their partner will be in Slovakia, or maybe in Brazil, or maybe in Singapore or something like this. If the partner can provide what they need in quality they need at cost they can afford, that are the factors. And we've seen the cooperations happening sometimes very far, because at some event, at some conference, at some expo, the two companies got connected. They find out it could work for them, and they are cooperating. So this is also what I'm trying to explain to government and to agencies. Like, doing country events in this industry makes no sense. We want global events. We don't want to meet, I don't know, even Korean industry and market was for us too small on the part that was connecting. No, we want to go and meet everyone at some global event, and then we will pick the best possible cooperation out of that. And it is working, I believe.
So let's talk a little bit more about people, talent, human capital. You've both mentioned actually the talent that both Serbia and Poland has in the gaming industry, programmers, storytellers. Is that still actually the case, that there is abundance of both technical and creative talent? You obviously talking to probably all your members and the issues, the challenges they have. In Slovakia, it's definitely starting to be an issue to hire qualified people on a kind of mass scale, and the more the industry grows, obviously the needs kind of multiply of the companies. And in Slovakia, actually, it is no longer the case that we have kind of cheap and very qualified labor, and a lot of it. What is your experience, Chris?
Well, definitely very similar. As soon as the ecosystem develops to a certain extent, you hit sort of a plateau about, when it comes to talent and hiring. So definitely problem number one are seniors. Like I said, we were lucky that there was no brain drain regarding this, but finding talent outside of Serbia to fill these senior positions has been very difficult. I'm not sure if it's because of the pandemic. I would say like all other aspects are okay. We have a certain number of foreign workers, but I think it's around 3%, which is, I think we can disregard that. So our number one issue would be how to attract and retain this talent. The other thing is, I would say there is a huge gap in terms of game design and biz dev. So we have really a lot of very talented developers and artists and storytellers, but BizDev and let's say user acquisition, marketing, employer branding for these bigger companies, and I would say game design definitely for these smaller teams that are in phases of ideation. So we can make games that work, that look very good, but long term they are not so successful. So our guess is it's because of the game design, and we are developing some programs to attract this knowledge from other ecosystems, to have some boot camps, conferences, and things like that. But maybe Jakub has some advice for us how to fill this gap. That has definitely been an issue. And I think that's the main reason why we still haven't seen a AAA project, for example, such as Witcher, come from Serbia.
Go ahead, Jakub.
You're muted, Jakub.
I believe I'm muted. Yeah, I strongly believe manpower in game industry is an issue for every game industry all around the world. Wherever we went and did some discussion, there were always, I don't know, 30% of open positions or something like this everywhere, from United States to Japan. That's a problem. Everyone wants a senior that has some 10 years or 15 years of experience. It's crazy because we as industry have like maybe 10, maybe 12 years, and everyone wants seniors that have 10 years of experience. So they would have, where should they get that? So yeah, so this is difficult. How to attract talents? I don't know. We are lucky probably also by the Witcher blessing and some other stuff by being successful and quite relevant in industry. So it's maybe a little bit easier. I think also for Serbia, not being in European Union is a little bit more difficult. I think it's easier for us to convince people to get passport of European Union by working 5 years in Poland or something like this. It's beneficial as well. Definitely you have to catch up with the salaries, and we've seen, especially on programmers, that Polish programmers' salaries are way closer to German programmers' salaries than the nationwide average, and so on and so on. But then in the end, I'm considering maybe it's not that bad. Like, since I remember any research was done on Polish game industry, so it would be, I don't know, like 2014 or even earlier, lack of skilled, lack of experienced manpower was always number one trouble pointed by companies, number one limitation in the growth. And in 2014, we believed it's 4,000 people working in game development in Poland, and now it's 12,000 people. So where did those 8,000 people came from? We have no idea. Well, probably universities at some point, the big process of companies taking unions and having regulars in a year or two or something like this, and other stuff. And it has to happen as a process. There is no other way. We will not import game designers from Moon or Mars, because every country on Earth has not enough of them and wants them. So we need to teach them everywhere.
Mm. Well, one of our tactics has been to sort of shift people from other industries into gaming. We've seen developers from automotive industry, for example, from Bosch, who were hired at the Ubisoft Belgrade studio and got promoted pretty quickly to a lead position. So we got to get creative, I guess, and look for people in places maybe that we haven't thought about before.
I think also education is important. Education in Poland exploded like hell. We have now over 70 programs at over 50 universities that are offering some game dev studies. Not all of them are great. I even believe some of them are quite not good, but in this abundance, there is some strength as well, and they are definitely releasing valuable work candidates every year. And I hope the quality will improve, and with that, more and more good juniors will hit the market.
But you have to admit it's a bit of a slow process.
Yes.
By the terms of the industry. You need people now, and you will have these juniors in 4 years from now, when the industry will be completely changed, the entire landscape compared to today. So there's ups and downs.
So would the solution be to bring those game developers from abroad? Is there, I mean, are you actually seeing that either in Serbia or Poland, that or are you trying to attract people from third countries or from outside, from abroad? Estonia obviously has this very systematic approach to attracting people, founders or IT specialists to Estonia. Have you seen any effort like this in your countries?
Well, I don't think we should import people, because then you're operating with the same amount of people globally, or let's say on a European level. We need to import knowledge. So these people that know things need to transfer that knowledge to new people here. So you have more people sharing the same knowledge. I think that's the key. And we do this through, of course, the mentorship program, other initiatives that we've had in the SGA, and I'm sure every association in every country has these efforts.
Jakub, you are an associate professor at the university, so you have a very, I would say, extensive understanding of the role of the university and the role of formal education. But what is the role of formal education in gaming? Is that not overrated or underrated? I feel, as an outsider, like that university is not necessarily preparing those developers for the market. And as Chris said, they are typically, once they graduate, the market is completely different than what they were actually studying. What do you think is the role of formal education in gaming?
Well, not exactly, but first of all, we would have to discuss that in game dev there are so many different specializations that you need to teach them completely separate. So first of all, programmers, I strongly believe teaching something I call hardcore programmers with good theoretical, mathematical background is the key. If you have good programmer that knows how to solve programming problems, he will be able to learn new engine or new programming language quite quickly. So that's the thing. Arts, I would say in arts a little bit similarly. Maybe it's more training than teaching, but what we are still discussing, one of the most needed specialization, 3D animators. Yeah, you can teach them definitely. Even tools they are using are not changing that quickly. Well, they are changing, but then switching to a new tool, it's not 5 years, it's 2 months or something like this. So you definitely can teach them. Game design, that's more difficult. I'm running a game design course myself, and I think it's very difficult to teach game design. Like I believe I know how to do good games, but how to teach how to do good games, it's another level of complication on top of that. I think this is the problem we're trying to solve in game dev education all around the world. I think we're trying to teach through as much of practice as possible. So students should do games, students should do projects, students should participate in competitions, game jams, stuff like that. Definitely, you don't need higher education for that. You could do that in any way. We also have some of those programs in Poland. We've seen some of those programs in other countries where instead of, I don't know, 3 or 4 years of teaching a little bit of everything, it's a very concentrated course over a year and a half, 2 years or something like this, releasing some designers to the market after that. So you can do that that way as well. But I wouldn't say the college education, the university education is wrong or not necessary. Please keep in mind that games are culture. You need to have a lot of different contexts. You need to understand culture. You need to understand a lot of things. So you can then benefit from what you learned to take your knowledge, take your experience from different places, and based on that, build games. It's doing games. It's not like, I don't know, apps programming or something like this. It's way more complicated. So I think actually the university education still is valid in that area.
I would just add that there is a secondary role of formal education, and that's that it lends a certain gravitas to the entire industry. It's a signal to the government and all other stakeholders that it's like a serious industry. It's not a hobby. It's not something you can learn online. You know, so I think a certain amount of formal education programs is necessary in every country.
I feel like the interdisciplinary nature of gaming is kind of a huge opportunity for the entire educational system, because like in our part of Europe, at least, or I can say for Slovakia, we tend to produce kind of really good workers, I would say, but it's more difficult to stimulate creativity across actually the educational system, and gaming is an amazing example when you actually can put the two elements and two aspects at work and actually produce impact in the society and also for the economy. We are about to conclude this, for me, very interesting discussion, and I have a couple of last questions. And I think the most important one that I would like to know is your personal mission, but also your mission for the organization that you represent. Like, where do you see, Serbia or SGA in, let's say, 5 years? Obviously, from what I am hearing, you are very ambitious as an organization. But where do you see SGA in several years, Chris?
Well, we definitely see us a lot more involved with other countries, which is something we mentioned today. All the knowledge we gather, we would like to distribute to other communities and ecosystems. Of course, by then, I would like to see several AAA titles that were very successful globally that came from Serbia. We would like to see a lot more educational and opportunities for financing, definitely. For the SGA specifically, a bigger team, an entire space dedicated to making events, exhibitions, a place where people can gather and make games, like a physical space compared to this that we're trying to operate online now. Mm-hmm. And of course, sorry, just to conclude, so sort of to tie in everything that we've said today, I think gaming is completely different than any other industry in terms of the workforce that is actually in love with the product that they're doing. You're hardly going to see someone working and wanting to work in the gaming industry that is not a gamer themselves. And I think this is the only industry where you can say that. So I wouldn't be too worried for us. I'm guessing we are a nation of gamers as well as Poland.
Great. Jakub, where do you see the gaming industry in Poland in the coming years?
The gaming industry in Poland in 5 years, well, probably slightly bigger and more successful. I don't think we can keep the pace of growth by 25% forever, because 25% for next 4 years and it would be 20,000 people. It's impossible to imagine that. So I think it will slow down in that factor a little bit, but I believe we will continue to produce games that matter, big titles, good indie titles. I don't think we will shift strongly towards the mobile. I don't see much impact coming from the meta thing. I'm actually quite skeptical towards that. I strongly believe we will continue producing AA, AAA titles for PC and consoles, and this will remain our specialty. As industrial organization, actually, I don't have answer where we see ourselves in 5 years. We are rethinking things right now. We are on verge of something new, maybe. Times are strange. It's difficult to say what we will be doing in 2022, because we don't know what events will happen, but we will be not able to reach them, and what events will be cancelled or online, or it's very random situation. It's very difficult to plan. So yeah, we're discussing, we're planning, and lots of questions, quite few answers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Hopefully we can repeat this panel in 5 years in person and see where we are.
And see where we are, exactly. And one last question, actually, because Chris, you mentioned that you have 30% of the workforce in the gaming industry are women, girls and women. And my question will be, since my kids are kind of running around, my question to both of you would be, what is your message for the kids, and especially actually for the girls, and how can we as parents, motivate them to be more engaged in the industry, and how we can increase the number of girls going into the gaming industry in the coming years?
Well, I think parents are a bit reluctant to be a part of the gaming life of their kids. Because they don't understand it, they cannot play games. For example, you can sit down and listen to the music your child is listening to. You can sit down and watch the same movie or TV show as them, but you cannot sit down and play a game. And I'm saying that you can and you should. So talk to your children, ask them, why are they playing the game they're playing? Try to, play with them. Yuki had this whole amazing initiative. I think it was called Just Play. Or something like that, play with your children. So get involved in the development of your children in terms of games. Children cannot find opportunities online. You have to do it for them. So if there is a school for programming for girls, you need to find it and enlist your daughter there. For example, Ubisoft just recently started development school for girls in the primary education sector, which I think is amazing. But parents need to hear about this, and they need to have sort of think in advance and see that this is something their children should do.
Mm-hmm. Great. Jakub, any concluding messages for the young generation or for the parents of the young generation?
Yeah, I totally agree here with Christina. Very good advice. I would just add one little thing. Mathematics. You cannot make game while ignoring mathematics. There are those memes, I will not learn math, I will do games in future. No, you cannot do games if you skip math. Programmers need math a lot. Designers need math. How are you willing to balance things in your game if you cannot do basic math on that? And many other specialties working on games need a lot of learning. They need a lot of subjects, so all of the science and many other things, but math is the key to so many things. You need to have good math. I strongly believe my math is not good enough at some places. So yeah.
I'm very happy that this conversation is recorded, so we can play it to our kids and also to parents to motivate them. I will certainly play the math part to my son, looking at his results in the past month. But Jakub and Chris, I would like to thank you for the amazing conversation. Well, for me, it was very, very interesting and enjoyable. So thank you for finding the time that you spent with me and with all the viewers that are watching this conversation. Too bad it couldn't happen physically, but I'm pretty sure we will eventually meet, and I hope we will meet in Košice, where this Game Days conference is organized physically. Košice is an amazing city. I'm a Košice native and a big fan of the whole scene in Košice. And this week, actually, 26th to 28th of November, a lot of great events are happening in the city of Košice. Art and Tech Days, East Innovation Conference in that 1 week. And it's really worth coming to the city. And I hope you will be able to experience it as well physically, and will be able to meet in Košice. So thanks again, and hope to see you soon.
Yeah. Final question: can I have a pečené koleno in Košice?
Absolutely, not one,
I'm
but many.
definitely looking forward to to be there. Thank
Perfect.
you.
We'll be able to. We're happy to host.
Thank you.
Bye, Chris. Bye, Jakub.
Bye. Thank
Bye-bye.
you.